Thanks, Nighthawk. I'm Dave,
I'm Mackie.
and this is Shiny Side Out on WZZR, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on, this is the website name, revolution.radio, where you can find unfiltered unfiltered ideas and conversations in the chat room where I am and Becky is right now. We're in the chat room. I'm just going to get a thumbs up from Becky, no doubt.
That's great.
Yeah, and and the website's also a great place to go and get your merch. Did you know it also has archives there? But we'll talk about it in a minute. Mackie, did you know that this is show number 632?
230 and 600. I was familiar with this concept.
Well, you might be familiar with the linear concept or non-linear. This happens to be a linear count of the shows that we're doing. Non-linear is the rest of the universe and time, space, unconnected. But do you know what you can do? If you like our show or any other host shows, you can do two things. One, you can catch us on air, online, and anywhere on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop digital radio. I'm staring at you, Grace. You still need to supply me with a Grace Tabletop digital radio. DAB. Do that. 600 plus shows, and I've mentioned it every time. Yeah, 600 ads. Free ads. Oh, well, they weren't supposed to be free. They're meant to generate some business for you. And surely after 600 of them, we can deserve one, right? That'd be great. Anywho, if you miss Solaris' show, Solaris comes on before us every single week. She does that and has an awesome show with awesome guests. And tonight, I missed it too. And if you did, don't worry about it. You can jump into the archives. They're free. And you can download her show, our show, anyone's shows from there. And they're in MP3 format, really easy to consume. And you can binge whatever you want, because that's the new thing. Binging. Let's binge. I was told binge drinking is bad, but binge watching Netflix is good, right? So, hey, you take the good with the bad, I suppose, right? Not at the same time. You can download any shows you like and listen to them in your own time. That's really what we're saying here. We don't support binge drinking. Although if you come to Bathurst, when I'm camping there, you might have a great example of it if you follow me or find me somewhere slumped in a chair. Right? Anywho, just saying that out loud, probably that was one of the inner voice moments, wasn't it, Mickey? But
yeah, it's okay. It's all right. It's the drinking dead. The drinking dead.
It's only once a year, and it's only for a week. It doesn't matter. Look, I have fun, and I drink at night time. So, did you know that it's free? Sure, I'm making excuses now. I can stop when I want to, Mackie.
I know, right? I'm not hooked. I don't want to quit. I don't want to quit.
Not today. Not today, Satan. Okay, so it's free to access the archives. Now, Mackie, you and the audience, I hope you're pleased to hear that I'm still broadcasting from Dark and Junk Country. Mackie, whereabouts are you?
I'm in the beautiful country of the Daruk people.
Yeah, that takes me back. So, Mackie and I pay our respects to elders past, present, and future of these areas that we're broadcasting from. But think about it from where you are, wherever you are on the planet, and in whichever time you are, because it's probably the future. I'm not talking in the past. I'm not going back in the past to wherever you were. But if you have a memory of being somewhere, have a thought about those people, the traditional custodians of land, whoever they were, whatever country you're in. And in some places you've got to go a long way back. But you know what? Did they look after the land? Well, did they live in a way that possibly in a decade's time we're going to really wish we'd known more about? Or within a decade, maybe by the end of the year. Who knows? Whenever a cataclysm should occur. 2036, April 13th. I don't know. This just, dates just roll around in my head. Don't worry about it. Mackie, I thought we'd have to be living by campfires with no electricity and tearing off those scabs from all the radiation. I thought we'd have to do that a lot sooner than what I'm seeing on the news now globally. This kind of a joke, and it kind of isn't, is such a wet sock. Like, if you're gonna go to war with someone, go to war. Don't muck about. Yeah? I'm looking at you, Russia, and I'm looking at you, Iran, or Israel, or whoever you want to be. I don't care who the country is. And it just seems to me, Mackie, I had another one of those epiphanies this morning when I was watching my daily bout of incoming news streams. I have to call it a bout because sometimes I'm yelling at the screen. Just telling everyone. There doesn't seem to be. So my epiphany was the 1984 moment where the TV's on and it's just talking about some conflict somewhere. Yeah? There's always a conflict. There's a conflict going on, and sometimes it's you're winning, sometimes they're winning. Isn't that what's happening? Isn't it? You know? That's a little rhetorical. Yeah. A little rhetorical. Yeah. But I saw that, and alongside all of this, Elon Musk was getting questioned by a media person saying, so all this stuff on your platform, it's not good. And he goes, well, free speech, right? And he goes, well, why don't you take all the stuff that's kind of hurtful down? It's not illegal. It's not. We take down the illegal things. Like, and he didn't say it in this interview, but before he got there, child porn was really bad it was rife on the platform in little groups. He got rid of all that. That's good. But what's going on now is the governments of the world are wishing to control mis and disinformation. Now, who decides what is mis and who is dis? I didn't say who is mis. What that information is, and whose side do you take? Well, at the moment, that's going towards the government. The governments in Australia and in the US are creating departments to be able to control the messaging. Yeah, but just back it up for a minute. Why are they doing that? And why is that no one protesting in the streets? And I don't know the answer. And this big thing is, who decides what is right? Not the WHO. Not talking about you, because that's a whole other conversation. But if a government is considering something mis or disinformation, is it really? Or is it only going against their own narrative? Because that's a really fine line. It's a fine line between what they consider the truth and what's really the truth. So if we all take our minds back 3 years ago where we couldn't say boo about either the thing that was occurring in our environment or the thing that was being pushed upon us, I suppose, in our environment, we couldn't say something about either of them. We couldn't talk about an origin, and we couldn't talk about either efficacy or safety. Couldn't. People were getting banned. People were getting shut down. YouTube channels, the voices were being silenced. So someone decided that it was wrong to go against the narrative. I didn't. Mickey, were you involved in it? Did you get a golden ticket or something?
Well, I was part of the memo. I mean, I don't like to talk about it. So
I'm sorry I brought it up. No.
What? I said too much. What?
Yeah, what I say. So, I'm becoming Hecklefish. I'm sorry, HA. I can't help it. It's such a lovable character. It's like The Simpsons. It's in my head and programmed for responses. All of those golden things. Oh, what about Gertie? So, this is the big problem that I'm seeing right now is Elon Musk was confronted with, well, aren't you going to, play along? I'm paraphrasing. And he goes, only if it's illegal, we'll take it down. The rest of it, no. Good luck with that. I am paraphrasing. It doesn't look like that at all. But this is my point. My point is, we're seeing it happen right before our eyes on a global scale. And no one's doing a thing about it. Now, back to you in the studio, Becky.
There's a good reason why this is not, I guess, encouraging or provoking a more
any response.
Well, yeah, and the reason is because for the last, look, it started probably when I was in high school. So for the last 30 years, we've seen a massive consolidation of the media landscape, especially in the Anglo-Saxon space, like especially English-speaking world. Not only, but certainly there.
Because there was locally
and if you speak other languages,
news
then
outlets in journalists, and it was all locally owned and sourced material. Now it's a tear-off.
Oh, look, absolutely. There were a whole bunch of independent correspondents. I mean, thousands. Some worked for Reuters, some worked for IP, some worked for AP, and other news organizations, and that still exists. Don't get me wrong, right? Having said that, though, unless you speak another language other than English, that is, or other than Mandarin, because if you speak Mandarin, you're just as bad of a mess as the English speaker. If you have access to another language, I strongly urge you to watch news programs in that language, or from that cultural environment. It will be quite an eye opener. Having said that, now the consolidation, like there were thousands. Like Dave said, there were thousands of independently owned newspapers, radio stations, TV stations, and all kinds of media. And this was before the internet. So we're talking about the consolidation before the internet became as powerful and maybe even overbearing as it is today. And it's now down to, I think, about 5 or 6 that own the vast majority of all media franchises. 5 or 6 corporations, that's it.
Yep.
And I had a friend, if you're a long-time listener of the show, you know this, who was a journalist. And then we hadn't spoken for many years, and we found each other on Facebook, hurrah. And, we just started having a chat. And I said, isn't it dreadful, to see all this concentration of media ownership? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, it doesn't really make for much of a varied opinion, right? It's really not at all what you want in a democratic kind of environment. He goes, but no, you're wrong. And we had a bit of an argument. And he
that's a light way of putting it.
He unfriended me. And I go, okay, fair enough. Clearly, that's not something. No, he was a journalist. He's actually a German guy. That we grew up together, and then he had moved to America to be a journalist.
And when you say have a light argument, this went over quite some time. You posted, you cited a number of examples, and they just completely put a brick wall up, refused to believe anything you said. Then cited an article where the headline was pro his argument, or their argument, but the article was pro your argument.
The final analysis came out that's true, unfortunately.
And then, woof, when you pointed it out, Gonski, right? That was the end of that conversation.
Yeah.
How can you stand so strongly on a point and then cite an example that completely destroys you? I mean, that's good journalism right there.
See, if you argue on the internet, which I don't recommend to anyone, which I don't do anymore, but if you do argue on the internet, people just find stuff. They just quickly search for something that seems to support their argument, and then they pop it in. Haha, see, touche. Well, not really. You should really read what you post before you post it. But But it was really look. It really is a problem. There's a really great movie. I know I keep mentioning it, but it's just a fantastic movie, and the movie is called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yes.
Now, it shows you in a microcosm, and I think it was a Coppola movie, Francis Ford Coppola, I think.
Oh, okay.
And it shows you in a microcosm just how, I guess, power and influence really work. You know, like this tycoon that didn't want Jimmy Stewart to have a voice, calls all his buddies in the newspaper publishing business and goes, you know, like, don't cover him, don't give him a voice, etc., etc. And some of them, I think, have to watch the movie again, but they're obliged. But this is what's happening today. There was this fantastic collage, Dave, and I know you saw it because you sent it to me again as well. There was a fantastic collage of, and this is scores of different news outlets, different anchor people,
Yeah.
different hosts, male, female, and they're all saying the same thing verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
So these are different channels, different TV stations across, I think even across countries. It wasn't just America, it was across the UK,
right.
Australia. And the copy they're reading is exactly the same. Not similar. It's not the same story they're covering. It is exactly the same text they're reading out.
Including the
These are
pausing.
supposedly-
It's okay to buy yourself a gift. Even with the laugh that they're supposed to do in there.
It was incredible. And then there's a collage which shows them all next to each other as they pop up, and you shake your head and you realize that the editorial power comes up from up top. There's a really interesting which I just finished a show called Succession. It was meant to be like a bit of a satire on the Murdochs and the all the other media moguls, the Packers, I guess, and a few others. But in it, now this is a TV show, mind you, but in it, the TV station that they own, or one of them, is responsible for the count, or the I guess the projections. That's the word, the projections of the votes, and they cajole. That's the word. They cajole the guy who is quite ethical. And it's really hard to cajole him, but in the end they manage to call the election for their favorite candidate, which then, of course, snowballs into that person winning for various reasons. But the point is, he was called early. We call the election for this guy. It is in the bag, etc., etc. And then eventually it carries the election. But based, I think, on that false initial call. And in reality, you have to understand, it hasn't been an election, a free election, I want to say never, right? I don't think it's ever been one. I don't think there's ever been an election that actually reflected the will of the people. The only thing that you know out of history that has reflected the will of the people is the French Revolution, or things like the French Revolution, right? That has reflected the will of the people. But even that is manipulated. You know what? Yeah, look, this is the unfortunate truth. And this goes right back to 1984 and Dave's comment there. People love to be led. They love to be led. It's hard to make decisions on your own, especially if you live in a large body politic, as we do now in countries. There's like millions of people. You never get a consensus. Nothing gets done, etc., etc. At least that's the argument. So let's just leave all the decisions to those that are smartest. Right, and out of that, then but this is the thing, right, Dave?
Uh-huh.
Out of that misconception is born the myth that the people that are in power because they should be in power, because they're the smartest, they deserve it, they are better than all of us. Unfortunately, and let me disabuse you of this illusion, that is not true. That is probably as far from true as possible. The people that crave the power, that eventually get the power, both through money or political influence, or both, in fact usually they go hand in hand, they are the least deserving and the least capable or qualified to have that power. Because the only thing, and this was super obvious in Australia in fairly recent memory, The only thing they're interested in is their own personal gain. Well, why do you say that? Well, in Australia, you vote for the party. Okay? Whoever is the leader of the party at the time becomes prime minister. It doesn't matter. You can stand in your head. That's just how it is. Right? Is it good? Is it bad? It is what it is. Now, so this party was in power. Okay? And I think 4 or 5 prime ministers walked through that door. Not because they lost the election. This is the same party. The same party just voted them out for various reasons, you know. And they voted them out. Shh. Don't look up. And looking up never helped anyone. It was really amazing because once you make it to the top job, and people don't fully understand what it means to make it to the top jobs. So let me give you an example. There was a lady, she was in charge of the disaster that was Robodebt. In Australia, we had a program where some geniuses got together and decided, we're just going to automate debt collection. That's good.
We're going to run an algorithm, see?
Yeah.
On the database of what we've given out and work out who needs to pay some money back.
And they're doing something similar. They're doing something similar again, by the way, just so that you know. Yeah.
People committed suicide over receiving a letter, Mickey.
Yeah, no, people
they owed $20,000 and they go, for what? I didn't.
Yeah.
What?
And it turns out it was wrong, right? But the lady in charge, the minister in charge, she was then put in charge of the submarine.
Great.
Of the submarine contracts. Anyway, point is, the Robodebt became a big hoo-ha, and she was forced to resign from her very lucrative $700,000 a year job. $700,000. Now, she is just I guess she's a minister in charge of submarines or the Navy or the military or whatever, or even just maybe a high-ranking bureaucrat. Now that's her, right? Now the prime minister, the cabinet members, and all those guys, they are making a mint. But this is not the only thing they get, right? I mean, they get office space for life, free travel for life, a staff for life. This and the pension is very generous, or at least used to be. I think there were recent changes to that. And the funny thing is this: Mr. Albanese, who is now being pushed by the Greens to make education free again, in fact, studied for free himself. Because the year in Australia, the year that universities became payable, or you had to pay for your education, was the year I started. If I had started 1 year earlier, then I would have been fine. But the year I started, they introduced the Higher Education Contribution Scheme, or HECS for short, which on average leads to about $25,000 to $30,000 worth of debt for your course. But if you study medicine or law, God forbid, that could be blowing out to $150,000 or even $200,000.
Yeah.
And that's a huge issue at the moment. Look, it's the cost of living, right? Pressure that's already there. It's the pressure, or the inability rather. Forget the pressure. There's no pressure. It's just the inability to buy a home for most people, right? Young people. And on top of that, you have potentially a massive educational debt, right? That you have to pay back. You'll never ever emerge out of this hole. It doesn't matter if you studied medicine or not, right? This is a hole. Even as a doctor, you will have to dig yourself out of over decades. Okay, and that's just unfortunate. It's just what it is. But the point here is that these people, right, make decisions on these things. They took full advantage of all the things that were available when they were young. Free education, this and that, and now they make decisions on the rest of us or our children on whether or not they should pay. Of course, they should pay. Let them pay. Why not? So the people that are at the top. And this is the people that we can see, by the way, right?
Oh, yeah.
They only have one interest. And the interest is for things to stay as they are. That's it. There's no other interest they have. Sure, they will talk about this and talk about that, an opportunity to take, shake a hand and kiss a baby, or force someone to shake your hand, like Scotty from marketing. Wasn't that the funniest thing?
Such bad publicity that was.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, normally they get a friendly crowd, I mean, I would fire all his minders. That's what I would do.
But what possessed him to go and grab forcefully the guy's reluctant hand and try to shake it.
I don't even know where to begin. I mean, you look at
How?
it and you think about it and you go, you have to be kidding. But nonetheless, it happened.
Yeah,
we
no,
have
how it happened.
Yeah, but the point is that these people are not the best people, and they're not the smartest people. Okay, they're not. I wish they were. I really do, but they're not. And the problem that we're now facing is that the people that are actually in charge, the parasites, the true parasites, have made it so that the actual parasites you never see. You don't know who they are. Even the next layer down, you don't see. And I noticed because, again, going over old ground, but we shared with you the list of billionaires, right, recently, 2,600 billionaires, whatever. And one Rothschild on the list that you've never heard of. And by the way, these are not just individuals, but they're talking about family fortunes as well. So that their family, it's not just, because you can argue, oh, well, maybe all the Rockefellers are not billionaires because there's 100 of them and they all share the wealth, whatever, blah, blah. No, that's not the case. They're also taking into account the Forbes list. It's also taking into account family fortunes. One Rockefeller, one Rothschild you will never have heard of. So we know that the true billionaires, or dare I say trillionaires, are well in the shadows, even though we know who they are. But there's another layer on top of that which we simply do not know. We don't know them. And why do I say this? Because of all the things that have happened on this planet over the last few thousand years, and especially most recently. Let me put it this way. Most politicians, and even really, really rich people like Elon Musk or Bill Gates, they're not read in. Or they're read in only partially into some of the plans. And I'm saying this because the technology that exists, okay, not pipe dreams, I'm not fantasizing, but I'm convinced that this tech exists. I've done a lot of reading of reports and books and documentaries and listened to testimony from people. But that convinces me that the technology that is being spoken about actually exists. I'm talking about things like gravity control, right? That's one. Also, free energy is probably the wrong word, but let's call it 0-point energy or energy that could usher in a post-scarcity society. That all exists. Now, and as I said, people are only partially read it. Certainly, none of the people that we can see have been read it completely. That means, though, by omissions or by elimination, that there must be a body of people that is fully read it. Has to exist somewhere. Somebody has to control it, right? Look, you can say, oh, Mackie, that's just crazy, it's a conspiracy, and you're wrong because where's the actual proof? Well, I give you a couple of pieces of proof. Right? One, virtually every single inventor or scientist that has come up with some kind of radically different energy source, free, clean, etc., right, or very, very cheap, has been killed, or had a bad accident, or a sudden bout of pneumonia, or whatever, or fell out of a window, if you will. That's number one. That's a fact. You can go and look at it yourself, but that's a fact. Okay? So who's arranging all of that? Oh, the oil companies? Well, maybe. But some of these people are really obscure, hard to find. In my opinion, this is organized at a much higher level than the energy concerns. That's my opinion. Again, I don't think, because this suppression didn't just start with free energy, by the way, right? This goes way back. Whenever there was a controversial topic to be discussed, it was always silenced. People were kept ignorant for centuries on purpose. Who does that, right? Oh, it was the church. Well, yeah, but this was across the globe. This was a concerted effort across the world. Okay, so that's point number one, evidence point number one, if you will. The other one, and this is in my opinion, Dave, this is the most obvious one, and this is the one that's screaming us into our face, and has been for a long time. And I've been interested in this since I was 8 years old, some time ago now, which was the quest for ancient civilization, or or the search for civilizations that existed before ours, right? So before 10,000 years ago. I've always been fascinated by it. I don't know why, it's just something that grabbed my interest and hooked me, right, with the first Berlitz books that I read. And you have to be blind not to see the evidence. So let me just list a couple of points. We know that the Younger Dryas came to an abrupt end. This is the end of the last ice age. So the last ice age ended about 12, 13,000 years ago and led to massive increases in the levels of the oceans. Massive. Okay? 100 meters. 100 meters. We know this happened. We also know it happened catastrophically fast. Okay? And we know this because, especially in North America, right, Canada area, there are these massive areas. No, I keep saying massive, but it's not a word for it. Of land, which are so badly eroded and are covered in what, for all the world, look like ripples you see at the beach in the water. So as the water crashes against the beach, you actually see little dunes forming on the bottom of the ocean floor, if you will, right? You see it; it's there because the water just moves that way. And we see this as well, but these are hundreds of feet high and hundreds of feet long, or tens of meters high and tens of meters long. These things. They're massive. They're huge. There's this whole area that must have seen so much water come through in such a quick time that it boggles the mind.
The scablands you're talking about there.
That is exactly right. The scablands. I mean, if you just look at that and just look at the pictures. You go, wow. We have geologists telling us that the Sphinx is water weathered. The last time there was appreciable water precipitation in that area was, again, at the end of the Younger Dryas, etc. So the Sphinx is that old. Okay. There are all these other ancient megalithic sites. I mean, they're built with stones that boggle the mind. I mean, you just look at it and go, what? I mean, it's amazing, right? Same as South America. You look at some of the stones and the way the stones are put together, right? Without any mortar, by the way, and they're still there. Okay, so pretty cool. But the point is, somebody is directing our attention away from that. So people, of course, are people, and Graham Hancock is probably, at the moment, right now, he's leading the charge in this one, right? It really is. I mean, it's other people before him, Robert Bauval and John Anthony West, Charles Berlitz, Robert Schoch, of course, Hatchet Childress, and a whole bunch of other researchers have had their say in there as well. But right now, I would say it's fair to say it is that Graham Hancock is leading the charge because his research is quite good, and he goes everywhere. He actually goes everywhere. He's not one of those armchair guys. He actually physically goes places. Okay, but somebody is directing the official scholars away from it. Göbekli Tepe. I mean, how do you explain it? You don't explain it. I mean, the key thing is this: Zahi Hawass, the head of Egyptology, not anymore, back in the day, right, recently, arguing with Graham Hancock, didn't even know what Göbekli Tepe was. What? So there's a concerted effort for people not to look at these things, to not investigate them. And there was an article that was recently removed, the Indonesian structure that was investigated quite in detail for decades now, by the way, where scientists, accredited scientists, have found, well, this is very, very old, right? And it doesn't really fit, but here it is. And the article was removed without, and I've posted the information in the chat and elsewhere, without any credible reason as to why the article should be removed. I mean, if the article is wrong, okay, fair enough, show me where it's wrong, and then we can publish a correction. Not remove the whole thing, but say where it's wrong. It's wrong here, here, and here. Okay, got it. These are our mistakes? Yes, they are. Okay, let's see if they are mistakes. Okay, they are mistakes, let's fix it. Now, this is the new article with the mistakes fixed. That didn't happen. The article was removed because of the outcry of the official scientists, if you will, of the establishment, at the temerity that these people had to question the official story, etc., etc. Now we've got DNA evidence that points that way, but you have to ask yourself, who is organizing? This is my point, really. Who is organizing this active turning away from subjects that we should be studying but are not? Who is discouraging us? Now, if it was the billionaires or the parasites that we can see, something would come out. It would leak. Somebody would say, Bill Gates paid someone $1 billion not to look at that, or Elon Musk, is this really crippling free energy research or whatever. I'm not saying that, I'm just giving examples, okay? It would come up. But it's not coming up because the direction is coming from much more obscure, in my opinion, sources that have a lot more power and a lot more sway than a Bill Gates or Elon Musk, for that matter. And not obeying them is death. I mean, there's so many unexplained deaths in the world of people that had some phenomenal secrets to reveal, let's say, right, to us. It boggles the mind. But there they are, they're dead. They're gone. And if you think that these people would shy away from having a plane crash to silence one person, you got another thing coming. They would go to war, killing millions to silence one person.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter to them at all. So that's why I'm convinced that there is a higher order of parasite which has not yet been unmasked. Now, we've got a fair idea who they are. Obviously, Dave and I have got a fair idea. And again, don't know what they look like or what their names are, but we've got a fair idea who they are, where they've come from, how long they've been here. And that's not really, that's hard to find out either, if you're interested. But where they are, no idea. Where they're hiding, no idea. How they organize themselves, no idea. Certainly in some kind of compartmentalized function or order where people only know what they need to know, right? And only the actual top people, if you want to call them that, know the whole picture. Whereas everybody else underneath them only knows a bit. This, you need to know this piece. It's like agile, Dave. It's like agile programming. You only work on the piece that concerns you. So, and that's why I think, to answer your question as well, that's where we are, and that's why I think the situation is as it is, and why people haven't really cried out against this obvious media, even social media manipulation, censorship, or directional social media, because honestly, I think people have forgotten it shouldn't be like this. Because you and I read dinosaurs. We remember print press, and then we used to read books, and I had a chalkboard in school, if you remember chalkboards, and overhead projectors. That was the height of my technology in school. But we weren't really victims of social media, Dave and I. So, but I understand how people fall victim these days. I get it. I really do. But that's why it doesn't happen, because people have been conditioned, Dave. I think people have been conditioned.
Yeah.
In 1984, right? Like, yes, sure. They used to say, today we're fighting South, whatever, and tomorrow we're fighting North, whatever. Oh, but they used to be our friends. No. And this actually happened. Remember in Afghanistan? America was invading Afghanistan. It wasn't going too well. And a reporter asked a question of one of the, not a politician, but one of the officials that had, when Afghanistan conducting the war. And they said, aren't these the same people we trained, 10 years ago against the Russians, gave them all the weapons and such? We don't remember that. That doesn't matter anymore.
Your point being?
Exactly. Exactly. Right? What? And that's exactly what happened in 1984. That's exactly what happened. No. Yeah, they've always been our friends. What? No, we were fighting them yesterday. No, always been our friends. It's insane. It's insane. And we are there now. Again, we're still there. We're still there. It hasn't changed. But now the narrative is becoming more complex. Ukraine, Gaza, right?
Yeah.
India, China, Burma. It's really a very complex narrative, but there's only one outcome, Dave. And the reason I think why we haven't seen a hot war yet is because the time is not quite right, in my opinion. Not quite right. I think we need a little bit more of everything specifically in the United States. Okay, because if it came to hot war, Biden is not really keen on a war, right? I don't think Trump would be either. But if it came to an election, and let's say it doesn't matter who wins or loses, but there will be confusion and anger, just like last election. It's going to happen, right? And America might even be crippled into inaction. Who knows? Even though they've just today passed the Ukrainian support bill for 61 billion or 62 billion, whatever it is.
Yeah, I saw that today. They passed it. Yeah,
61 billion. But I think that time in March. This is again. I'm going on the record here. I think if anything were to escalate, I would put it into November timeframe of this year. That's where I would see it.
Yeah, that's about the election, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I look, for me, all of this stuff that's going on, and the media are presenting, missile strikes here and that. Look, my popcorn's gone cold. Such a wet sock. Like I said in my opening, if you're going to have a war, have a war. If you're going to use kinetic means to show your blustering point of view, I think they've done that, but in a way to diminish it, actually not to create, like not to escalate. And in the first non-escalation example of 2024 in the last few years, this is what I've seen. 300 projectiles, let's say, whether they're drones or missiles or whatever the other thing was, I forget now, ballistic missiles. Rockets, that's right. 300 of those, and you just bomb a couple of things and be quiet, like I think an airfield or something, right? Hang on. Is that what? Wow, because 300, like we did the math last week, you could do 2,000 according to the scale. Yeah, you could do 2,000 in reply, and the world wouldn't have seemed too harsh on you. But rather than escalating it, they've just, I'm just going to lob something over the fence, and it's not being really serious about it. But look, there you go. And I think that when I saw that, I thought, well, it's not this time around. It isn't this time. Because, when I see biblical towns like Damascus, that's actually written into the Bible, right? When I see that town, because it's part of the end times discussions, when I see it being hit by something, it's like, whoa, and everyone took notice that knew what they were looking for. Like, I'm not a religious guy. I just think some of these texts are pretty accurate. And is the right combination now? Who knows? Well, we can only know in arrears. So when my skin is turning to ash and I stand looking at the bright light on the horizon of a huge nuke, and as my skin starts to peel away, my brain is still active for a second or two, and I go, this was it. That's what I'll do. When I know it. Because as good as any prophecy is, it's hidden in allegory, and it's extremely difficult to work out when. That's the trouble. If they put out a video series, I'm looking at you, Nostradamus. Yeah. If you'd done something like that, maybe, or written it so, hey, what the hell if you get persecuted, right? Cool. Tell us something that we can use. Have you read his quatrains? I know you have, Mackie, but to the audience, if you read his quatrains, they could be any time. Could be anything
at all.
That's right. So it's just a matter of time before they're all correct.
That's true.
Do you know what I'm saying? I don't mean because he was a genius. I just mean because the randomization of events could mean that something's going to fit. It's going to fit that description that he wrote. But the Bible's another thing, even though it's been translated 100 times, well, enough times for it to not be accurate as it could be. If it were the original text, it's still difficult. There's still some little hints and clues in there. I'm still waiting for the Temple Mount to be owned by the original owner. That's part of the end times. And the Black Pope, I think we've got him now. The last Pope, same guy. So, look, I sound like I'm a doomsdayer. I'm really not. I'm a realist. I'm watching this stuff happen over there. I know our economy is terrible. There's a whole bunch of distractions in the media, which is preventing us from seeing the real things going on. All the news is just, some sports person is, I don't really care. I'm sorry for them, right? Whatever the story is, it shouldn't be primary news. Imagine if a news outlet abandoned their normal structure. So, first a greeting, then a throw to the weather that's going to come up later in the show, and you get a little hint of that. They read the top 4 stories, headlines with no depth. Then they start to give you the first story, and then they go to a commercial break. They come back, read you the next 3, hopefully, if you get that far. Then there'll be a sports bit, and then the weather bit, and then the news closes. That's it. Interleave as many ads as your network provides you. That's it. 4 stories. There's nothing else. There's not even any depth. Imagine if the first story they read, they covered for the entire thing, stuff the sport and the weather. Who cares? This story is more important. I think people should know. Well, that news person wouldn't be there very long. Because what do our sponsors meant? Oh, well, this held all the ads. This is more important. Right? I don't... See, that's never going to happen. Even on their secondary channels or tertiary channels, they have a number of digital channels now. Then they could just run news 24/7. But rather than just showing a night sky with absolutely nothing happening in Iran as they're supposed to be being attacked by Israel, there's nothing. They've got 2 anchors sitting there like wood ducks, not with no material. They're waiting for something to happen, and that's what the secondary channel looks like. So there's really nothing. It isn't what we're being told. And is this is my opening and closing, is this not only the distraction part, but for us just to maintain that level of fear? I don't feel as much fear now as though when you and I were young, with that, the duck and cover, the threat that anything you see a line in the sky, it could be a nuke, an inbound. There's none of that now. I don't feel the fear that I'm supposed to be feeling. Maybe it's all the calluses of all the other fear.
We used to have stickers. We had these these stickers in school events which said, rather a Pershing in the garden than an SS-20 on your roof. An SS-20 was the USSR's nuclear rockets or mid-range rockets.
Oh.
And the Pershing was, of course, the American equivalent. So we'd rather have them stationed in Germany, which never really happened, rather than having SS-20s rain down on us from above. But they handed out in school these stickers. I'd rather have a nuclear weapon in my garden than be annihilated. Thank you very much. It's cool.
Wow, that's pretty good.
It's all right. It's okay.
So my whole point is every time one of my friends sends me is this World War III, Dave? Not yet. Not yet. We're probably seeing the beginnings of it, yeah? And anyone could argue either way, positive or negative against that statement. Sure, I don't care. But where will you be if you're against it when it does start? I told you so. It's like those, in the same manner, I suppose, Mackie. It's like when all of the messaging was pro jab, and you and I know I said on air that I kind of prefer to be at the end of the queue. I do want a larger test sampling group that makes me more comfortable with it. Because when someone's telling me to watch it, when to do it, to experience something, I'll wait a little longer than everybody else. Like I haven't seen Titanic movie. I haven't seen it. Oh, granted, Pearl Harbor movie was, 90 minutes too long because they showed the attack at the end. They could have started with that and just done frame by frame. I would have been happy with that. But Titanic, everyone went to see it. Everyone talked it up too big. And it's like, well, now I can't see it. Because despite the loss of life, my daughter brought this up. Despite the loss of life, they were celebrating a romance on board to humanize it. To humanize it. The loss of life. That doesn't interest me. I mean, it's what a lovely story. I'm glad someone wrote it. I'm glad they made it as a movie. I really am. But it just disappointed me. Why don't you just... I'd prefer to watch a documentary about it, despite it being incorrect. I don't care. Someone could argue, I suppose, in the same way, Mickey. I'm going to step down off my horse and say Star Wars game changer in everything. They had to invent all the technology to make the film, which is great. They end up making computerized driven stop motion camera movements to be able to sync that with another ship in separate shots. Fantastic. I mean, I just love that. Really, really, really good work. The Matrix had to invent technology to make the movie. Otherwise, it would never have looked... We wouldn't have remembered the first movie the way it was. It just wasn't going to be a thing. The only other thing they did was that Limitless movie where they did the fractal zoom. They just kept zooming down the street. Whoa! How good was that? They had to invent the technology to do that. And some could argue, Mickey, that the romance portion of Star Wars kind of detracted from it, having a relationship going on. Kind of, not really, maybe. I think the Jar Jar Binks thing should never have happened.
Oh my God, don't even go there.
And I know there's an edit. There's an edit of the movie without him in it.
Is there?
Yeah.
I didn't know that, really.
Yeah, it's a fake fan film or someo's put it together, but it's pretty cool.
I mean, I don't even know what that was. I watched it and I go, what? What? I mean, I'm sorry.
It was sad the voice they gave him and the manner of speech they gave him. I thought that was really bad.
It was just not. It was not good in any world. I don't care which world you're in.
And so Mickey and I both agree on Matrix 2 and 3 and 4, and because 4 was like a clip show.
I don't even know what 4 was.
A catchphrase show.
Oh.
They just gave random new people the same phrases from the first movie. That was it. And with all the money that Trinity earned, her accent now from a different lifestyle really downplayed her role. So, sorry to say. But anyway, look, we've come to the end of the first hour of talking.
Jeez, that was quick.
Yeah, it is. It's always quick. And after the show, after the small break, we'll come back and we'll be talking about the Cosgrove Mirror, time travel and remote viewing, part 9. Crowd goes wild. If you're watching this on YouTube, do like, subscribe, share and comment. And this will be the end of this first hour's video. There'll be another one for the second hour. See you at the break.